I went in October of 2011. I met Chris and John up in Albany, and I was very impressed with them before I got there. And when I got there, I was very impressed with the training, impressed with the introductions that were made to the various lenders. And I tend to be a person who asks a lot of questions, so people tend to remember me because of that. And I've stayed in touch with them over the last 3.5 years because I will come across things that I don't know. So I will, and they said, if you have questions, we're always going to be here, and they have been, which I'm happy to have them there to bounce ideas or questions off of. Well, I started in commercial finance in 1989. I did equipment leasing for several years. Then I actually went to work for a large equipment leasing lessor for about 5 years. Because of some personal challenges, I had to leave the industry, and I went to another industry for about 11 years. And then was kind of at a crossroads, saw an ad for Commercial Capital Training Group, and decided this would be the time to go back to the industry I was a little bit familiar with, but I wanted to be much more broad than just equipment leasing. Not that there's anything wrong with equipment leasing, and learn more about the commercial finance business. And I learned a lot about the alternate finance possibilities that I really did not know very much about. And that's been most of what I've done between the time I left there and what I've done with my business now. I've always tended to try to go places that other people don't go, to try to get demand that way, because if you have a lot of people chasing the same business, it makes it hard. Not that it's impossible, but I like to go to areas that are maybe a little bit more difficult, but I think the reward is very, very great at the end. It was the summer of 2013. I think it was August or September, and I had an email inquiry on my website. Someone had seen my site and asked me if I did financing around the world. I hadn't done anything around the world, but of course I said yes. And I told him, we emailed back and forth a little bit. And one of the things that I think that was very distinguishing about my initial contact there was, even though this guy was in Thailand, I was responding to him right away. And he remarked to me he had never been in contact with someone who was so responsive, especially since I was on the other side of the world. But that aside, he gave me just a broad overview of what his project was, and then sent me a bunch of documents, which I looked at. I do have a financial background, so I was able to ascertain that it did look like it had a lot of positive financial possibilities, but I knew it was a challenging deal. So I worked some of the network that I actually had built up myself from some deals that I had been working on, and I brought this information to a investment banker who I was acquainted with internationally, and asked him if he thought this was a deal that was viable, and he did. And so they sent them a term sheet, and then a letter of offer with a bunch of underwriting that would have to be done. That whole process took a few months. The investment banker then went to meet the client over in Thailand. They spent a bunch of time together. They laughed they shared a bottle of really fancy wine together. They connected. But that just started a journey, because it was still many, many months, almost a year, until the transaction actually closed. It was a $26 million development of luxury homes in the Philippines. And actually, along this time, there was a tsunami that hit the Philippines. And all I kept thinking of was, I hope it did not destroy this area where this project is going, because the sights and scenes I was seeing on TV were pretty terrible. And when I called the client, he said they just had a little bit of damage. I was very pleased to hear that. Anyway, as time marched on, there were many, many ups and downs with this deal, many conference calls in the middle of the night, problems. And a lot of times the problems really were with the client, not with the lenders. They couldn't agree amongst themselves, and there were many times I thought the deal was just going to die. But I hung in there and I kept my belief strong, and I actually was told the deal was going to be closing in July. So I was very pleased about that. Well, July turned into more delays, which actually turned into, I think it was December 10th of 2014. I finally got an email telling me that the deal was finally closed, that it was for $26 million development, and my fee was 1%. I had signed a fee agreement with them for 1% success fee, and so I had a very nice payday, to say the least. And I'd say that the key to the whole thing was sticking it out, not giving up, not taking no for answers, and believing that I could get it done. I mean, I have several other larger deals, believe it or not, in the hopper right now that are also very challenging. I often say to people, if I'm finding the deal and it's getting to me, there's obviously some challenges to it, but you can also look at challenges as opportunities. And like I said earlier, I tend to go where other people don't go. And yes, some people might say I waste a lot of time, but you learn. You learn sometimes what you want to do, what you don't want to do, and at the end of the day, it doesn't take too many $26 million transactions to pay your bills. So very satisfied with that. And I really found Chris's marketing package to be excellent. And while it wasn't a specific thing with his marketing, it actually introduced me to some other related areas that I picked up on myself. But the initial foray or the initial impetus was created by Chris's marketing program. And that's how this guy found me online. And then I took it from there.